This is Let's Talk Radical Radio, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This online air community forum believes that your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.org.
Your hosts today, both online and broadcasting, are Mary Frank leading our conversation, Paul Raffel answering the phones, and I'm Robin Carpenter.
And when you call in and hear the phone ringing, just hang on. When you hear me say you are on the air, please give us your first name, turn down your radio, and please watch your language.
And today we're talking about Donald Trump. And hopefully this will be a very non-judgmental discussion. We want everybody to call in. We're going to ask about how he had an astonishing rise to become the GOP nominee and whether that's a good or bad thing. And again, we hope we get everybody's viewpoint on this. Many believe that he represents a lot of negative things, but also that he shares some things with Bernie Sanders and that they are sick of business as usual and that the political system needs to be changed. Later in the program, we're going to talk not just about Trump, but it's this 36 million votes he accumulated in the primaries. And this is the story that'll continue no matter who wins. But in what form after he loses? Third party, violence, succession, states' rights? But we already have a caller, so can you let's take the caller.
We bring the caller on?
Yeah.
Hello, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? Hello,
They chickened
caller.
Hey there. I think I might be the first caller.
Oh, hi.
Hi there. Yes, you're the first caller.
Yeah. Yes, I'm Paulette, and I'm from Texas.
Hi,
Oh,
Paulette.
hi, Paulette.
Hi, Paulette.
Hi. I didn't vote for Trump, but I am definitely a Republican, very conservative. I'm not happy with anybody, but Trump is my man. I will vote for him anytime over a Democrat.
And Paulette, how did you feel about, say, someone like Bernie Sanders, who is running, or do you just feel like you would never vote for a Democrat? Because you've always...
I would never vote for a Democrat, and I would never vote what I feel he is a communist. I don't believe in the socialization of anything. I don't believe from taking from the rich to give to the poor, overtaxing the rich, which I am not. But I just think we've given away too much, too many programs, too much money to people who just sit and expect a handout from the government.
And what,
everybody to, pardon?
I was just going to say, what qualities do you admire about Trump?
Trump,
I think
really, he's honest, but he's arrogant. But he says a lot of things that I believe in.
Uh-huh.
But I'm just, whether he comes through with it all is something that I would hope to see if he's not just a lot of hot air.
So, Paulette, you're like what you were saying was you don't necessarily admire Trump, but you're going to stick with your party and vote Republican because it still represents your values.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I know because, as our community and the listeners know, I'm originally from the Deep South as well, and I think I know that this is a Paulette maybe I know. But and so, that's the thing that I think a lot of my Republican family and friends feel like they want to stick with their party, and there's nothing very appealing out there other than that. So
exactly.
Because I have some what do you think about the Libertarian Gary Johnson? I have a lot of family members that are going to be voting for him.
I haven't even heard of him.
Oh, okay. Well, the media is not really covering the third-party candidates very much. So,
of course, yeah, and I'm afraid they may be going to a third party. I don't know, but I feel like if they do go to a third party, then it's going to put Hillary Clinton in, because it's kind of like when Perot Bush out. It put Clinton in.
What's interesting is all the Clinton supporters are worried third party will put Trump in out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's nervous about that.
So, Paulette, do you think the Republican Party platform has changed over the years from when you first started voting? Does it resemble the Republican Party that you used to vote for?
Yes, I still think it has this, like on abortion and the same-sex marriage and things like that. I still feel like they have the same values that we've had for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Does it concern you that he has no experience as a politician, or is that a plus in your eyes?
I think that is so good. I'm tired of these Republicans that sit, and the Republican Party, these senators and all, I feel they're rhinos. In names only. Well, they're just conservative Democrats.
Talk about welfare people. These guys who are in there for 30 years, getting the lifetime pension and free health care and all that other stuff,
and working 90 days a year or something. Right. All of our Congress and Senate.
Yes, and that's not right. I believe in term limits, and I wish they would have passed it years ago, because we had it up for a vote. And I voted for term limits, because it's time to clean house, because they're not doing anything for the people. They're doing it for their special interest groups.
And Paula, what did you think about the Tea Party thing? Because that was the Tea Party's whole thing, was like, we're not going to let anything pass that Obama or the Democrats want, and we're just going to try to stop things in its tracks. Do you feel like that kind of helped Trump rise, because it irritated so many people within the party that now we're not doing anything, and we have the House and the Senate? Why aren't we doing anything?
Exactly, and all they've done is roll over and given Obama everything he wanted.
Now, that's funny, because, I think as a Democrat, most people feel like that Obama couldn't get anything done either, because basically nothing was getting done. So
he's gotten more passed under closed doors and after hours than he should have.
That's not really the whole story.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's funny because on the other side, Democrats feel like he had to use things like executive power and things like that, or else we would have gotten zero done, no budget happening.
No federal judges.
But mostly like when we shut down the government for a month or so, those kinds of things. I think they irritated both liberals and conservatives in that they're all sitting up there getting paid and not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. And the deal that I see is that they were trying to keep Obama in check. He just can't have a blank check to go right on and spend all my money and my friends and everything else, and bringing in people, refugees and all that we can't afford to take in, and then taking it away from our military. And I feel like Donald Trump is more interested in our military men and women than Obama has been in his eight years that he's been in office.
Uh-huh. So, Paulette, who would in the Republican race, who would you have preferred to have voted for rather than Donald Trump, if anybody?
I voted for Ted Cruz, but now I'm so disappointed in him. I don't even want to say I voted for him. Actually, yeah. But of him. Well, because I'm Texan. Well, I'm not really originally from Texas, but I voted for him because I thought he did a really good job for Texas, and now I'm just ashamed of him.
Oh.
Well, Paulette, thanks so much for being representing the conservatives, so we have all viewpoints on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for calling. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Y'all have a good, wonderful California summer, because we're getting rain and heat.
Well, you guys stay dry and hope no flooding comes your way.
I know. I appreciate it. Well, y'all have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Trump.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
There you are.
So,
fascinating.
And I mean, I think that because I come from an area where we're all mixed together, and you have people, and especially someone like Paulette, who has very deep conservative beliefs, especially about abortion and things like that. And it is interesting to see how, if you look at the news, like I try to watch Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, and then either NBC or ABC regular networks on stories. Every night I try to watch at least 3 networks to see. And it's so fascinating to see how the stories get completely turned and twisted, and we all listen to the media that reflects what we think is the right viewpoint, or the sane, or the smart one, or the whatever, or the one that's not being, like for probably Paulette, it's the one that's not being, left-wing liberal media, and I'm trying not to listen to right-wing Fox News. But when you do listen to it, you see we're all kind of getting fed what it is that we want to hear.
Sure. You listen to what you want to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, it's still very, very hard for me to understand how a woman can feel that somebody else can make the decisions. If you don't want to get an abortion and you don't believe in abortion, don't get an abortion. But shouldn't everybody have the right to have that power over their body? That, I wanted to ask her that before she hung up.
If it's the Paulette that I think it is.
Yeah.
And I have family members that are like this, that it is a deeply held religious belief that abortion is murder, and we're not allowing people to make a choice about murder.
But that's
their
fine.
belief.
That's their belief and their religion. But
yeah.
why isn't everybody else entitled to their belief and their religion? That's really the question.
But the difference for them is that abortion is murder, and we don't allow. You could say, "Well, my religion says I can murder, and why? And I get a choice. So don't tell me I can't murder." So see, they see it as we're actually legalizing murder. So we have to understand that's that mindset, and that it truly is that we are making something that's horrible legal. So, I don't think any of us in this room have those feelings, but, it is,
we know it's out there.
Yeah.
I also thought it was very interesting that she said, that Obama got everything done. Obama, in my mind, got practically, he was stopped at almost every turn. And they see it completely differently.
And it's interesting when she was talking about the veterans in the military, because I asked friends of mine that I know that tend to be Republican or Libertarian, and that I've talked to, what they think. And a lot came up, and because I come from a military family, and most Southerners have family in the military, they started feeling deeply, deeply disrespected during George Bush's reign.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And started feeling that basically, one of my family members said, and basically, somebody should have been in charge of overhauling. We should have had a czar appointed to overhaul the VA because of the horrors of the VA. And we're creating all these horribly wounded, injured vets coming back. So people in the military, it's really shaken them up. And Obama didn't do any better. And they see Hillary, or they call her Killary, they see her as, she really wants, that our military in the United States is being used as corporate armies for corporate interest and not American interest. And so one of my family members said that, he did not like Trump at all, but that he, could not see voting for Hillary because she's taking us all over the world, inserting us in wars. We're going places we're not supposed to be. We're creating all these injured and wounded vets, and they're coming back and they're not being taken care of. But so his feeling is I believe we will get more entangled and put in more places under Hillary than under Trump, so that will be better for our military. Now, I actually believe that. I believe that Hillary has gotten us, in so many issues and problems.
I'm guessing that it doesn't matter who's in. We're still going to be at war with somebody somewhere over something.
Yeah, because it's good for business.
But in the beginning, what Trump was saying, we're coming home. We're getting everybody out of everywhere.
But he's also saying, let's bomb everybody,
Well,
too.
The problem with Trump is, for me, is that we don't even know what's in there,
Well, the other
because
thing,
he changes his mind all the time and says
and sometimes
things,
in the same interview. He can take a position, then counter that position, and then completely counter it again. So we really, really don't know, and that is very dangerous.
And what's also interesting, in my opinion, is now what's interesting is that Paulette doesn't know about Gary Johnson, and this is also a downfall of the media. And I have to say, it's also an issue in that, both parties are afraid a third party will help the other party win. She's afraid it would help Hillary win.
Yeah, that was
We're afraid it's going to help Trump win.
Yeah.
So my nephew, Aaron, who he and I have been in a lot of conversations, he was like, I'm a fan of neither, and originally thought of voting Trump for lesser of two evils. I originally liked the fact that he wasn't worried about other opinions or political correctness, but over time he has just made himself out to be an arrogant, and I can't say this word, but it ends with whole. And that being said, I would never even consider voting for Hillary. So I'm now torn between voting for Johnson, who I don't think can win, or not voting, but I could never not vote. But Johnson at least represents for me, what I saw. And he also said that he would have considered Bernie. He really liked Bernie, and he wished Bernie was running.
Yeah. Well, we have a caller.
We do. Hi, caller. You're on the air. What's your name, please?
This is Bing.
Bing.
Hi, Bing.
Hi, Bing.
Hi, all. I see your program is how did Trump get to where he is, basically. And I found a lot of insights into this article I just read. It's called America's Shadow, The Real Secret of Donald J. Trump by Deepak Chopra.
Oh, interesting.
And he talks about he is bringing out the shadow side of a lot of people, the hatred, things that they really kind of suppress, the unconscious. The shadow is a term by Carl Jung, which studied what we repress, and that's the shadow side, and Trump is really tapping into that and making it legitimate, basically. Saying, isn't this fun?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that because his tapping into, first of all, the racism that's been boiling under the radar, not so much under the radar, but the fear of the economy and what's going on with people's money and the basic racism that has not made that much progress in the last forever years, that's all part of it too. The thing that concerns me is the fear-mongering and the whipping up of violent behavior. And, of course, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but thank you.
Can I mention a couple other things?
Please.
Well, this goes back, I think, there's a split in the narrative of our country. There's a huge section of our population that feels that America is the greatest nation on earth. Americans are the best. All our empire is for bringing democracy and all of that. But we really haven't dealt with issues like slavery or the genocide of indigenous peoples. And I think until we have a truth and reconciliation process where we face those embedded the racism, we're not going to really solve our problems. So I think we need to bring that out and have that discussion. Germany faced what they did in the Holocaust, and South Africa had truth and reconciliation, right?
Yeah, we're the immigrants.
That is so important that you said that. I actually brought that up in a couple of family conversations when I was back home in New Orleans and Mobile, as to I was a little nervous the first time I brought it up because it's pretty dramatic to say, if we don't go back, it's like we have this festering thing. If we do not go back there and do, as you were saying, do that healing and truth and reconciliation, and just own it. Let's stop pretending, calling it different things. Oh, the slaves were well fed, or that when they got and all the things. I mean, Andy and I were talking last night about certain things that I was told as a child, and the North really didn't care about slavery; they just cared about stealing our resources or whatever it was. It will always be there, this big, giant monster shadow of what we white colonial Americans and Europeans did. And I don't think we can ever be healthy. Do you feel that way, Bean?
Yes, absolutely.
I agree.
A lot of people, I'm Chinese American, and a lot of people don't know that there was a Chinese Exclusion Act from 1883 to 1943, and there were laws, miscegenation laws against Chinese marrying a Caucasian. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be able to be with my wife if that was on the books. But can I give a little plug for our show, Post Carbon Radio?
Yes.
Coming up on Monday, August 22nd at 1 p.m. We're going to be having a related discussion on while the Republicans contender with Donald Trump, we're going to be dealing what's happening inside and outside the Democratic Party now that Bernie's out and Hillary's in. What's the status of the Bernie so-called political revolution? And we're going to have two Bernie delegates, Norman Solomon and Russell Green, who wrote the climate action platform in the Democratic Party. And then we're going to have two Green Party supporters, Howard Ehrman, who's a physician in Chicago, who's a climate activist, and June Bisharis, who's with the Sonoma County Green Party Council. So that should be a vigorous...
Wow, that sounds like a great show, Bing, really.
Dealing with the quandary we're in, we all want to stop Trump.
And so that's going to be next Monday at 1 p.m.?
Yes.
On KWMR?
That's correct.
Thanks, Bing. Thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to look up that Deepak Chopra article. You guys, you listeners, this is Let's Talk Radio with host Mary Frank, Paul Raffel, and I'm Robin Carpenter. Please call us on 415-663-8492 and tell us your thoughts and opinions on the rise of Donald Trump, what that means to you, what that means to you about the political landscape. What are your concerns about someone like Trump, who is being, Gong was just saying, really shows a lot of our shadow side. And, what does that tell you about what's going on? Or is he representing unheard voices that have been left behind? Is he representing rage and anger that's just been under the surface? Call us and let us know what you think. You can also tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR with your thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, I just want to add a comment about his temperament. I mean, regardless of his political views, his temperament is frightening to me.
Yes.
Because he is... very thin-skinned. He reacts immediately and doesn't think things through, which can be extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous for someone who has, the ability to bomb.
It's a little worrying. But we do want to hear from anyone who's going to vote for Donald Trump. We'd like to hear why Donald Trump. Like Paulette was going to vote for him just because he's a Republican candidate, basically, right? I mean, she would never vote for a Democrat. Is that what's motivating? They say he's the populist candidate.
I haven't had one person in my family or friends that are Republicans say, I want Trump. They all are horrified he got there, but they're very torn about what to do.
Really?
Well, we have a caller.
Yeah. No, I know. That was my fault. Hi, caller. You're on the air. What's your name, please?
My name is Charles, and
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Charles.
I can't stay away.
Good. We want to hear from you.
You can't leave us alone.
Back to the refugee thing that Pauline brought up. I think there's disturbing numbers of refugees from Great Britain and Northern Ireland in West Marin.
Exactly, like
I've
all of
noticed
them.
That.
I don't know if the community can really bear anymore. I don't know. I mean, Trump just occasionally says something that's true, and people like that because, packaged politicians like Hillary Clinton just lie constantly. And so, yeah, is he America's id? Is he some kind of crazy, out of control, force? Of course he is. But I can't believe it. I love this. I'm going to correct somebody on Jung here in West Marin. But Jung, when he talks about the shadow self, he says the problem that we have is that we try to suppress it.
Yes, it wasn't a bad thing. It was something to be recognized.
And to be balanced.
Yeah.
That's right, and I think that, with this, we have a temptation. People have this. I don't have this temptation. I've been disabused of this notion so many times, that we're good people. And,
yeah.
And that just isn't the case. I mean, we've all been alluding to it about these wars, about this history and things like that. So, and I would hesitate to, attack Trump on any kind of sort of him being thin-skinned. I don't find Hillary Clinton to be a particularly attractive personality either.
No, I don't either.
Charles, it's really interesting. Like, I've had these very fascinating dialogues with my nephew, who is just turned 30, was in their early 30s, and living in Georgia, born and raised in the South. And like he was saying, like in the beginning, he said, Trump was kind of refreshing.
Yeah,
he was just saying what he thought and no political correctness. And in the beginning, I was like, good on you. And he said that then as time went on, he went like, he's kind of an arrogant, narcissistic jerk, to say it nicer than Aaron did.
Well, I think we need to turn that in on ourselves. I mean, I think...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the culture war, right? I mean, coined by Pat Buchanan, another lovely man. Which was, we know exactly what it is when they do it, which is all this stuff about kind of low church Protestants. Again, keep these Brits out. Christianity, these evangelicals and Pentecostals and their really backwards views that we don't like.
Well, backwards to us.
Yeah, but
that's what he's saying.
I don't think anything of using state power, not activism, not persuasion, not culture, use state power to tell them what you're going to have it was in the paper, you're going to have gay education for your kids, and you're going to have transgender bathrooms and stuff like that. That drives those people crazy.
Charles, I'm taking you back home next time I go to the South, because you're really getting at that we can't shove things down people's throats that they don't buy into, because then it gets suppressed and it pops back up somewhere else in a very often nasty way.
Well, I mean, you have to be careful when you talk like that, because like you're saying, it infuriated some people that women got the right to vote. So I mean, on any issue, there's going to be that kind of controversy.
But I think what Charles is saying is that if you keep using the federal government to forward and shift the cultural agenda, and we've been doing it quicker and quicker, then you have this buildup underneath. So it's not just one issue. It's been, to them, a lot of things. Is that what you're saying, Charles?
Yeah, and I think it's really pernicious, too, because when the American empire or nation, whatever you want to call it, started to decline in the 1970s on, right, so the jobs started going away, the prosperity started going away. Rather than address those questions, you have to remember there's a big shift in democratic politics by the end of the 70s. All those old liberals, are basically silenced and shut out by the rise of the new Democratic money people, a lot of them from California. This is too long a history to get into here. But instead of saying, okay, look at urban poverty, look at black poverty, look at the issues of poor women or the poor just generally, how could we actually make some answer to that is getting these people out of poverty? There was this great celebration of the culture of the poor, of their unique self-expression and all this stuff. That's really, I think, a very pernicious force in our culture. So the Democrats say, oh, it's so lovely to be different and unusual, and isn't that so much fun? I mean, it's really decadent. It's really these strange things from the corner of the empire that we parade them around in our courts. I always have to... Anyway, I'm going to ramble on here.
But Charles...
So it was the 70s when everyone started playing banjo? Is that what it is?
I'm starting a rehabilitation program. You go to the dance palace, you give them a mandolin, they'll give you a saxophone, you turn in a banjo, you get some maracas. I'm trying to help.
But, Charles, that's an interesting point, because the last politician that actually... Democratic politician that actually really honed right in on, at our core, is poverty and ignorance, poverty and lack of education. And if you start, like, instead of coming from the top down and going, okay, now we're going to all be so sophisticated that we're going to accept gay marriage and accept trans bathrooms and accept whatever, instead of going and getting at the root causes of issues. And it was John Edwards, who unfortunately had other issues.
You've got to be kidding.
That was his whole platform. We're America, and the Democratic Party is making a huge mistake if we do not resolve the issue of poverty and economic inequity. That is the foundation. We have to start down there and see what's going on with this inequity.
Unfortunately, he started down there.
I know. He stayed down there.
Charles, I want to ask you a question.
The problem is an economic system that concentrates all the wealth in the portfolios we don't talk about, the wealth of people of West Marin and their families. If you want to get into those questions of poverty, you reopen that scab of the first half of the 20th century and the kinds of competing ideologies that were going on, all of that scary stuff, all those millions and millions of people that died. And after the Second World War, we didn't want to deal with that. America's going to be nice. We're going to have 2 cars. You're going to get a house and all this stuff. And that was okay for people of our class because it was largely true.
Yeah, if you were white and middle class.
Right.
Yeah.
But it stopped being true for a larger and larger proportion of the population over the last 40 years. And so now all of those questions are going to be reopened. And the left really has to get into them and lay claim to them. Because if they don't, Donald Trump may lose in 2016. There's going to be another Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be like our second part of the show, and I want to ask you specifically, Charles. 36 million votes Trump received in the primaries, and this is the most GOP primary votes ever. So I think the story that'll continue is but in what form after he loses or wins? Third party, violence, succession, states' rights. What do you think is going to happen with the unrest that's been boiling up because of this?
Well, I think you'll see more populist candidates, and the lever, obviously, for populism on both the left and the right are these identity issues, and those identity issues are phantom. They're real in our private lives. As soon as they come out in public and say, this is what we need to be fighting about, are you for or against abortion? Are you for or against affirmative action? Are you for or against lesbians on the front line? As soon as it takes over the political discourse, it's a disaster for both sides. It's a disaster for everybody.
So what's the remedy for that?
Well, I think the remedy from that is the problem. The real conversations are more complex, more pedestrian, right? They're both boring. I mean, this is the great thing about a Clinton and a Trump. It's fireworks. It's entertainment, and everybody's entertained. So I think some of
it's what is it? Bread and circuses, like the Romans did.
Oh, sure. And look how people immediately, and you get this in West Marin. I mean, if you say something, if you say to Pauline, you want transgender, teachers in every school or something like that, yeah, she's going to freak out. But my God, you can freak the people out here too. And their minds immediately shut down, and they run away back into their sort of, their world of their opinions.
And just one quick thing you touched on. Being was talking about the shadow side, but talking about, until we do Truth and Reconciliation, about the way America came to be America was by genocide of the Native Americans and slavery. And if we don't make amends and deal with that, and then people of those worlds are economically handicapped and in poverty, and as well what happened with, I don't know if you've read this new book out, Hillbilly Elegy or Elegy for Hillbillies, is that you also have this huge white population in poverty. And we forget that. We always think of poverty, we immediately think of people of color. But we also have in the Midlands and in Appalachia, those areas, huge white poverty as well. So I think that's part of what, Mary, you're talking about too, all those votes that Trump got.
And then, again, those people's issues haven't been addressed by the Democratic Party. They're not speaking to those people. They assume that those are just votes they're not going to get or votes that they're always going to get. We think about minority poverty only because who knows a poor white person? Man, I'm the poorest white guy I know. And I'm walking around in the bathroom smoking a cigarette looking at Tomales Bay. It's really rough out there. Yeah, I think it has to happen on a local level. Once you bring this up to the federal level, it becomes this absurd opera. All these people would claim not to be opera fans. I think that's wrong. I think Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are a postmodern, grand opera.
I think of them as the best soap opera ever.
It's more like kabuki, really.
I'll get my plug. Sorry, Bing. And Bing may also be from the United Kingdom, perhaps from the Merseyside town of Crosby. I don't know. I'm doing Classical Friday tomorrow. You wanted something fun and light, and no, it's going to be boring classical music.
Jeez, we're getting all the programmers calling in, plugging their shows. What the heck?
All right, well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Charles.
And I'm glad you got people on that support Trump, and you really have to listen through those things, you would say, oh, that person's a bigot, I'm not going to listen to them anymore. You have to get deeper than that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, thanks, Charles, because that's true. If we don't understand why people are doing that, then we don't understand each other, and we let then the bigger picture divide us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And those, I mean, those are the conversations you need to have, but those are very personal conversations. The problem is, we don't. There isn't enough difference among us, and actually, we select in our groups to have no conflict, no difference. I think it's really strange.
All right, I'm taking everybody back home to the South with me. We're going to have a big trip.
We're going to Louisiana. All right, let me go. Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charles.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
And this is KWMR 90.5 in Point Reyes Station, 89.9 in Bolinas, and 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley. And KWMR is supported by West Marin Food and Farm Tours, offering culinary adventures in the Point Reyes area. Trips include local history, behind-the-scenes tours, and tastings of cheese, wine, oysters, grass-fed meats, pastries, produce, and more. Details available online at foodandfarmtours.com. That's foodandfarmtours.com. And KWMR is also supported by To Celebrate Life Breast Cancer Foundation, raising funds to help underserved women and men living with breast cancer. Through its Bay Area Breast Cancer Grants Program, the foundation supports nonprofits that provide direct and emergency services and believes that no one should face breast cancer alone. Information about how to get involved is available at tocelebrate.life.org.
And you're listening to
No, I did it again. Hang on.
Oops. Paul keeps turning my mic off.
When you're coughing,
you're prejudiced against me because I'm Southern and I cough all the time. You're listening to Let's Talk Radio with co-host Mary Frank, Paul Raffel, and I'm coughing Robin Carpenter. Please share your views by calling 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
And today we're inviting our listeners to express their thoughts about what's taken place in our political landscape and share their views on how Trump became the Republican nominee for president of the United States and why it's a good or bad thing. And also we'd like to explore after the primaries, after the election, the story that will continue is that what's going to happen with those 36 million voters who voted for Trump? What's going to happen after he maybe loses or wins? So let's take the conversation continuing. I'm very proud that we're taking it so deep and that we're getting different viewpoints, and we hope that you'll call in.
And I'm really happy to hear. Because just to let the listeners know, when Mary wanted this topic, I was like, oh, no, it's going to be just this, Trump bashing thing. And because I have this real concern about we need to be listening to each other, and we're getting distracted and kind of pulled apart by Trump and Hillary. And, it's sort of like, Alabama versus Auburn or, whatever, the big football game, this is a deeper issue. So I'm so happy that we all three had a lot of discussion about how to position this, and that Mary was so open about let's go deeper. Let's don't make it just Trump bashing, because that's fun, and we all do it all the time.
Right.
Well, he also shows up in every show, no matter what the topic of the show.
Exactly.
That was another reason I said, well, we got to do a show on him, obviously.
So my thought about Donald Trump was that he never really wanted to win president. That he didn't actually think he was going to be chosen as the nominee. He was just doing it for just to get his name out there, get recognized. And today, here's an article by Michael Moore about how he thinks Trump is self-sabotaging his campaign because he never really wanted the job in the first place, and that he entered the race in the first place just to get a better deal from NBC for his Apprentice show.
Mm-hmm. It's good for business.
And then he said the thing about Mexican immigrants being rapists and criminals, and they fired him. So there he was. He was running for president, and now he's kind of caught in the headlights and thinking, oh boy, what am I going to do? And if he loses, he'll get a better deal because he's been out front all the time. Mm-hmm. And if he wins, he's surrounded by kind of scary.
Scary people. But now I have to say, Hillary's surrounding herself by some
scary people, too.
But
Kissinger?
Ken Salazar, the fracking man. But
TPP.
I think that, it is interesting. I mean, we haven't had, and I don't know anybody. So this is a group of people that I don't even tap into that actually are start to finish Trump supporters. I don't really know anybody like that.
Right, even Paulette. So
none of my hardcore Republican family and friends. Most like my dad and his friends were, they liked Jeb Bush. So that was their, they want a more like back of the day, like a Gerald Ford and an Eisenhower, they pray for. But his dad said he couldn't even make it as a Democrat because he'd be considered too left-wing, Eisenhower. But, so it is an interesting thing. What's interesting, Mary, you brought that up about the crossover between Bernie and Trump. So, that what people want is we know it's a rigged system.
Mm-hmm. And we don't want business as usual.
And both Trump and Bernie, especially in the beginning, were saying it's a rigged system. Mm-hmm. And everybody at the bells went ding, 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 ding. Oh, my God, someone running for president is going to own up to it.
Yeah, and they actually said it. We have a caller. Let's take the caller.
Hi, caller. You're on the air. What's your name, please?
This is Sally.
Hey,
Hi, Sally.
Good day, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
So my thought was more about and is increasingly about the people who are going to vote for him and are very much for him, who hopefully will be crestfallen by his loss, his decisive loss in November. But my thought is, well, where those folks are just going to get more riled up and annoyed and angry and righteous. And I'm thinking about that Cliven Bundy guy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, because I just tuned in because I was sadly unavailable to listen the first half hour, so I hope it's not a repetitious...
No one's brought up Cliven Bundy yet.
Well...
But we have brought up the feds versus the people, so...
Yeah, the idea of when you think about, I actually do know, I have encountered a few people that really like Trump because they're under the impression that he's this great businessman and that what we need for the country is a great businessman. And my dog apparently agrees. However, I'm thinking more about these guys who think the federal land is theirs to squat on and all that stuff, the Cliven Bundy group. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of wondering, they were sort of entrenched and dug in and really tenacious about their position, literally and figuratively. And I don't know, I just think that's going to become more so, and maybe that movement will grow, perhaps not quickly or in any way that's going to be a whole lot worse, but any incremental growth of that movement, I think, is it just scares me because it's just a lot of gun-toting.
But I think on the whole thing with federal lands and use of federal lands by Bureau of Land Management or whatever the other agencies are, it's more complex than that. You've got these old-time ranchers and things there. And you've also got people, that's where a lot of our food comes from. But the biggest thing happening on federal lands, and I think the cattle families that have been there for generations feel so threatened, but we're fracking the heck out of federal lands. And Ken Salazar is one of the biggest promoters of it, and he's transitioning the White House or Hillary. So I think I think that those people, when we did a program on that before, and we might want to go back and do that again, but the use of federal lands. And what's interesting is a 2016 Republican Party platform calls for more transfer of federal lands, including several national parks and national forests, to the states. So that's, but then getting Ken Salazar in there on the side of the Democrats is also, it's like no one is sort of making a clear statement about that.
What they want to preserve.
But you're right, Sally, the whole thing of that concept of the feds versus us is that's where we got the Oklahoma City bombing. Mm-hmm. That's where we get, our homegrown terrorists come from that whole mindset that you're talking about.
Malheur.
And is this a great distraction? I've thought about that too. Like, you've got two people running who, when you look at it really closely, there's a lot of similarities with who they're bringing in to run everything. And is this a great distraction so they can pull something else off? I've actually been very concerned about that too.
But there is that thing, what you're bringing up, Sally, is are we going to get a deepening and a widening or spreading of that real anger towards the feds? And even when Charles was bringing it up, when we're also mandating cultural things.
It isn't just towards the feds, it's people of color. I mean, Trump has made it very clear.
But I'm just saying that one piece of it about, this thing against the feds is like, and that's where so much of our terrorism has come from, is those people. But anyway, that was just, my thought on that.
Yeah, I'm afraid
His
about...
verbiage is so extreme, Donald Trump's verbiage, and people love it. And also culturally, it really is just sort of like, it gets people very emotionally riled up, and people really feed off of that. It's not like we're in the age of reason or anything around here.
I agree.
It's the age of my feelings.
Right.
And I think that's why people do respond to him also in another way, because it's kind of like uber titillating. And
well, it's also speaking things that they were afraid to say that he's saying. I think that
yes,
but it's giving permission for that kind of really violent approach. It's a justification of that kind of behavior. That is my major concern here.
But one of the interesting things is when Paul was talking earlier about, and it's not just Michael Moore's letter about what he's heard. I also had seen some things from inside his early campaign, the communications person who left. She said, hey, this was to just get basically free advertising and pump up the name to help Trump get better shows.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden he started winning, and then we realized, holy moly. But what is interesting is like he just got crazier and crazier with what he said. And I think that truly is coming from the point of he's an entertainer.
Yeah,
he's about ratings.
Absolutely.
God only knows what he actually believes deep inside. He's just saying what people want to hear. So is that reflection?
Well, so what's scary is Mike Pence. They put Mike Pence in vice president. I mean, it's going to be people like Pence who are going to be running the show. If Trump wins, he's just kind of just be floating around promoting himself.
Going around talking.
Yeah, every young woman better get like a lifetime supply of birth control.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's going to get ugly. It really, he's way too extreme and misogynistic. And so you've got a man who objectifies women, who really just wants to be a star. And then you've got his yes man, who is really a true believer of the original sin.
Right.
It's a very dangerous coupling.
And if Trump loses, he's not going to admit to being a loser. That was that was the last paragraph of this article. He won't. That's the thing.
Yeah, he'll say everybody cheated.
Yeah, right. Well, he'll whip something up.
The election was a fraud.
Yeah.
Well, and basically what we've learned over the past couple of years is only, who knows who actually voted for who anymore. We're now realizing that voting and elections and primaries and stuff are being rigged all over the place.
Sure.
So he can get away with saying that, but that's really probably, I don't think that's why he would lose. But I also think that a lot of people who supported Trump in the beginning no longer support him because he went so off the deep end. And secondarily, the people that I know that are saying they're going to vote for him, it's because they would never vote for Hillary, and they are Republicans.
You have a letter from a very major Republican who switched. Let's hear that.
So Representative Pete McCloskey, who many of you guys know, a famous California Republican, he sent a letter out through the MoveOn.org list, MoveOn.org, sent his letter out to everybody on the list. And he said, my family have been active Republicans in California since 1860 and the election of Abraham Lincoln. I served in Congress for 15 years as a Republican between 67 and 83, co-chaired the first Earth Day in 70 with Wisconsin Senator Gaylord Nelson, co-authored the Endangered Species Act and other environmental legislation, and was the first to suggest Richard Nixon should be impeached. In those years, Republicans favored balanced budgets, women's rights, limiting presidential war power, civil rights, tax reform, and protection of the environment. But no more. The 2016 Republican platform calls for transferring federal lands, including national parks and forests, to the states for denying women the right to choose. It ignores our obligation to address global warming, and it moves to limit the voting rights of minorities and opposes campaign finance reform. And then there's Donald Trump. But defeating Trump is not enough. If Republicans are allowed to continue to control the Senate, the next president will be as hobbled as President Obama. Only if the Senate has a Democratic majority will the next president be able to appoint reasonable Supreme Court justices. We have the opportunity to elect Democrats in several too-close-to-call races, and then he gives you those races. Each of these Democrats can win if we act to balance the enormous financial contributions. And so thanks for all you do. Anyway, and there are links of how to help. But here you have one of the most respected Republicans saying, you better run from my former party, and we better get our act together. Get the House and the Senate, and let's just don't even think right now about anything else other than get that House and Senate back.
The Democrats are the new Republicans, is what he's saying.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But the thing is, I think for me, the most salient point he makes is about the complete ignoring of climate. I mean, here we have Louisiana, a third underwater. Is that right, Robin? A third?
30% of Louisiana is flooded. And what was really interesting, I posted on Facebook, is that we have on the news, on the nightly news, I was watching night after night with all this going on in Louisiana, that 51 minutes of every news show was about Trump, with about 1 minute about Hillary, 1 minute about Louisiana, 1 minute about the fires here. I mean, literally there's...
He succeeded in what he wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Sally, are you going to arm yourself and your dog for the post-election?
With provisions of chocolate, yes. Well, not for the dog. That's bad for her. I'll just breathe a sigh of relief when he loses.
Oh, okay.
Really.
Very
and
good.
then on to the next anxiety attack, which is
Hillary.
TPP and Ken Salazar and fracking. Mm-hmm. I mean, our work is never done. I'm not sure what our work is anymore. I feel like protesting is utterly impotent. I don't understand. It doesn't seem like... It seems like ever since George W. Bush said, "Oh, that's a focus group," when we were all protesting the invasion after 9/11, it just seemed like all of a sudden it rendered protests just not unimportant, ineffectual. Impotent, yeah. Impotent. So, I mean, I love the idea of protesting, and I think I always thought there should be like a billion-woman march, about what's happening with women's rights. So, I don't know, after the election, let's just get through the election and hope that get people out to vote. That's my big concern, is voter disenfranchisement, especially among...
And the lesson to be learned is vote in the midterms, too. Don't just
gotta
sit
vote
back.
In the midterms.
Exactly.
Ooh.
And pay attention to the congressmen and senators, congressmen and women and senators.
Yeah, exactly.
So off I go to stock up on chocolate and dog bones.
That's a good idea.
And potable water.
Oh,
okay.
Long live Louisiana.
And wine.
Yeah.
And wine. And dry wine. I encourage everyone to give as they can to Louisiana to help the people there with the flooding.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you, Sally.
Great show. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is KWMR's weekly Let's Talk call-in show with co-host Mary Frank, Paul Ruffell, and me, Robin Carpenter. To join our conversation, please call us at 415-663-8492.
I never heard from either one of you about what you think is going to happen to the 36 million people who voted for Trump, who have now been all hyped up in a very violent way. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, they're not going away.
Yeah, and I don't think all 36 million people were like the people at the rallies.
Yeah, but there's what about those people at the rallies?
To be frank, that's maybe 5 to 10% of the population. I mean, it's not.
Less than that.
It's not that many. It's not that many people.
It's only a few thousand people in each one.
Yeah, so I think that. I'm not that worried about that. I back to the point that being made, until we actually really, really go back and do something like Truth and Reconciliation, we will always have problems with violence. And so to me, the things that we need to address to not all be held captive by all of this insanity is voting. We know things are rigged. We know things aren't getting counted right. We know things can be flipped. You know, Jimmy Carter said he would never even, who goes around the world doing work on voting and holding elections, that American elections would be declared fraudulent if he came in here to look at them. So to get handwritten votes hand counted and people, you know, overseeing doing it. So first we've got to re-legitimize voting. It is no longer considered legitimate by people. So get the voting right, get the money out. You know, like we have to go attack maybe some at those root things and insist on stopping the militarization of the police forces and highlight the ones that are doing a good job. But I think the voting and the money out. Get the money out and make voting legitimate.
So I think the reconciliation is extremely important, too, because everything will fester until you take responsibility. It's like any relationship. Yeah. Any relationship can only move forward if you can say, you know, I messed up. I'm sorry.
That's what that was.
Well, yeah. Think about it.
But I don't know that we could ever do that. I mean, as Americans, we're like, I would
Trump,
never.
We can't lose.
If I was going to marry a country, I would never marry. You know, it's like when I say to my husband, Andy, do you want to be right? Or do you want to be married? You know, do you want to be right? Like, oh, no, we didn't enslave and kill all the Native Americans because we're great. You know, if we can't say we're not great. But how do we get people to go there? Because
step by step by step.
Yeah, but that's the thing, the mindset of that whole, like, America and we're great. And, you know, this whole jingoism is really, then it makes it, when you buy into that and you invest in it, it makes it really hard to go, oh, we're actually founded by a bunch of slave-owning one-percenters, you know, so that makes it's hard to take away people's, you know, to grab the Bible or to grab something that's so sacred to people and then go like, it was all BS.
Well, you don't have to grab the Bible. You can just say, look what we did.
No, I'm just saying, like, grabbing anything that's sacred away from people, you're going to have, it's going to be difficult. But I don't think we can move forward without that.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, gee, we're running out of time here. Okay, well, I want to thank all our listeners and callers today for your participation. I hope you'll tune in every Thursday at 11 because your voice really does matter.
KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the host and callers and do not necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. And next week, we will be discussing, let's see, as Paul Raffel said, Southern phobia. We're actually going to be talking about the flooding in Louisiana and asking why there hasn't been more coverage and concern about this. And there's a wonderful publication that I subscribe to called The Bitter Southerner. So I will be your Bitter Southerner talking about, you know, why are we turning our backs? You know, Sandy was covered so heavily. Is it because it's Louisiana? Why is it there? So we'll talk. So tune in then and join another lively discussion.
And this has been Let's Talk on KWMR, the first anniversary show of Let's Talk on KWMR. Thank you, everybody, for everything over the past year. And your hosts have been Mary Frank, Robin Carpenter, I'm Paul Raffel, and thank you to Bernie Stephan and Raven Gray for their contributions, and Charles and everybody else who's been on. Thank you, everybody. Now, stay tuned for Attunement with Anthony Wright.